Chapter 4. So you two will be my children. Hunched under the blanket, Sade heard Joseph clang the metal gates behind them, locking away the single-storey white house in the compound that was home. Joseph had known them all their lives, and they'd not even said goodbye. Sade tried to imagine what they were passing, leaving. The avenue of palms and the giant-leafed plantains clustered at the corner. She and Femi used to believe that the street ghosts hid behind them. Then Mr. Abiona's grocery table under the spidery almond tree, with tins, bottles, pots and boxes stacked high like colourful acrobats, balancing on each other's shoulders. Whatever Mama ran out of, soap, powder, matches, shampoo, palm oil, Mr. Abiona managed to produce it with a knowing smile. Sade would have liked to say goodbye to him too. She had seen him this morning, his cheeks squashed between his hands, his mouth open, speechless. He was one of the first people to come running from outside, to see Mama lying in the driveway. He must have heard the shots. Perhaps he had even seen the gunman's car speeding away. Already Femi was squirming, although the journey had hardly even begun. Uncle Tunde was slowing the car down, stalling, turning a corner. They must be entering Adeniyi Jones Avenue, passing under Dr. Meyer's Milk of Magnesia billboard. It was a joke between them to force each other to stretch their mouths wide as they passed under the gigantic blue bottle tippling out of its creamy contents. The dull drumming of traffic was now louder, punctured by sharp hoots, blasts and voices. They must have joined the streams of cars, trucks, motorcycles and cyclists thrusting their way to and from the city. Had they passed the trestle tables where Grandma's friend, Mama Lola, sat with her pyramids of oranges? Whenever Grandma came to stay, the two old ladies spent hours sitting there together, chatting in Yoruba about everything under the sun. In between, Mama Lola served her customers. They had been friends since childhood, but Mama Lola looked far more wrinkled, older and bent. Poor Mama Lola, Grandma often said. Sorrow had entered her home like a thief in the night. Having lost every one of her children, she was forced to sell oranges to earn a living. But now Grandma had lost her own child too. Did she know yet? Who would tell her? Would Mama Buki have to carry the bitter words in her mouth? Grandma would surely know as soon as she saw Mama Buki. Sade could just imagine their grandmother's eyes misting over, her furrowed skin crumpling. Whenever would they see Grandma again? Sade pressed her face against her knees, her body shaking with each jolt through the floor of the car. She and Femi were like two pebbles rattling in a tin, about to be flung away. Sade, Femi, stay absolutely still. Police check. Uncle Tunde's voice was taut as the car slowed down. They'd been going faster. They must have left the jostling city streets and were travelling on the open road out of Lagos. Femi's fingers grazed Sade's arm under the blanket. She grasped his hand. The engine rumbled as the car shuddered almost to a halt, then revved up again. The police must be letting them through. Femi pulled his hand away. Well, that's number one, muttered Uncle Tunde, like a grim sports commentator. But he was calmer than Papa, who would have been. Police were always setting up roadblocks, and Papa's anger simmered like pepper soup. The last time he had driven them to Grandma's, they had been stopped more than 20 times on the road to Ibadan. Sade and Femi played a game. Who could spot the naira note as the policeman's hand swept expertly past that of the driver in front? Mostly taxi drivers with minibuses full of passengers had to pay up. Usually the policeman stared rudely at Papa, sometimes demanding to know where he was going, but they never actually demanded money. Something in his manner must have warned them. But when Papa had driven on, his anger would erupt as he fumed about the daylight robbery of innocent people. Mama would place her hand gently on his shoulder. Don't give yourself a heart attack, Following. That would please them. Mama under the bedspread with crimson-soaked flowers. Mama under the blinding white sheet. Mama who read Papa's article out loud. Every day we are robbed under our own noses, and it's no use complaining to the police. Why? Because they are the robbers. Do you really think they will let you get away with this, Following? Mama had said. The bully only gets away with it because others let him. They'll have to lock me up before they shut me up. Yet Mama had never told him not to write. Uncle Tunde was slowing down again. Don't move, children. This one has a torch. The car lurched to a halt, and Sade heard the window being rolled down. She held her breath and hoped Femi was doing the same. I'm late, officer. My mother is coming to the airport now. I must be the first one she sets her eyes on. You know how it is with mothers. Uncle Tunde laughed lightly, his tone smooth and polite. Oba, open the door. What did you carry it for back? The policeman barked. Oh, it's only rubbish at the back, officer. Their uncle's voice rose on the word rubbish, as if enjoying a joke. I threw the blanket on top so my mother won't complain that her son is untidy. Okay, carry on. The policeman was impatient. Thank you, officer, very understanding. The engine stormed into life again. As soon they had left the roadblock behind, Uncle Tunde instructed them to throw off the blanket and to sit on the back seat. Did you give him money, Uncle? Sade asked, her heart pumping rapidly. Never you mind, that could have been nasty. If he insisted on looking, we would have been in big trouble. He would think you were kidnapping us, Femi muttered, sniffing. He brushed his arm across his eyes. Had he been crying? He wriggled on the seat, stretching his legs, and turned away from Sade. The lights of Murtala Mohammed Airport sparkled in the distance. Usually it was exciting coming out of the airport, especially in the evening. The main building glittered in layers like an enormous ocean liner out in the middle of an indigo sea. Thousands of invisible messages could be shooting at any moment between the great funnel-shaped control tower and invisible planes somewhere up in the sky. But tonight, Sade felt none of that excitement, only her stomach twisted and knotted. At this moment, someone in the control tower was preparing to direct the plane that was going to carry her and Femi far away from home. Even at night, the car park was as busy and noisy as any street market. They joined a winding stream of cars that eased their way through the crowds who were hustling back and forth with bags and boxes. Having found a parking space, Uncle Tunde told the children to wait. He would go first and find the agent and Mrs. Bankole. I don't want to go, Sade, Femi blurted, as Uncle Tunde merged into the shadows of the crowd. If we run away now, we'll miss the plane. They can't make us go. The gleam from passing headlights lit up little rivers of tears trickling down his cheeks. We can't do that, Femi. Papa doesn't want us to go, but it's best. Femi snorted and started fiddling with the handle of the door. If you run away, Femi, Papa will have to go to the police and then they'll get him. Reluctantly, Femi withdrew his hand. Sade's words subdued them both as if another blanket had been thrown over them. In silence, they watched the currents of people swirling by. When Uncle Tunde opened the door, a short woman with mango-shaped cheeks stood behind him. Her green headscarf and dress glinted in the beams from an overhead lamp. Come out, children. This is Mrs. Bankole. So you two will be my children. The lady formed a little smile with lips that glistened a deep purple. Mama never wore lipstick. Mrs. Peacock, Sade thought. She imagined a fan of feathers swooping up behind the lady. She loved making up names for people, and normally this would have been a joke to share with Femi, but Papa's words rang in her ears. Until you are safely there, your surname is Bankole, and you must only use the names in the passport. Sade tried to force the fanciful picture from her mind as they stepped hesitantly out of the car. Both children held back as Mrs. Bankole stretched out her hands. Her wrists jingled with gold bangles, and her chubby fingers were heavily ringed. Her nails matched her purple lips. Oh, but you have to look the part. A man in a pale suit with a pink handkerchief flowering out of the top pocket emerged from behind the lady. His cream jacket bulged out well beyond his legs. If you look out of place, that will make trouble for everyone, including your father. His eyes narrowed as if to pin them down. He spoke briskly, and his words carried the jagged edges of a warning. He was clearly the man who had fixed this all. The agent. It's very true, children. I'm sure you understand. Uncle Tunde's voice carried a touch of the urgent pleading that Sade had heard him use earlier with Papa. It was different from his ordinary voice, and not at all like his court voice when Papa had taken her to see his older brother at work. They had sat in the gallery, and Papa had explained how Uncle Tunde was pleading for his client to the judge. His words and manner had been so confident, but now, did she detect uncertainty, even a hint of desperation, behind his words? It's only for one night, until Mrs. Bankole hands you over to your Uncle Dilly. Don't forget your bags at the back. Uncle Sunday turned away, almost brusquely, as if not to let them see the concern in his eyes. Slipping on her rucksack, Sade saw her uncle draw Mr. Fixit aside and hand him a fat envelope. With his back to passers-by and partly shielded by Uncle Tunde in the car, Mr. Fixit rapidly began counting through the wad of Naira notes. In the flickering light, his stout forefinger jiggled at the speed of a fox pawing back earth around a rabbit hole. Once again, Mrs. Bankole held out her ringed fingers. This time, reluctantly, Sade and Femi each took a hand. You are now my daughter, Yemi, she confided to Sade. She will be 13 next month, the 13th of December. You will remember that? Sade did not reply. The lady's hand felt slightly damp and sweaty, and Sade winced at the thought of touching any of her jewellery. Mamma only wore one simple wedding ring. And, by good fortune, my 10-year-old son is the same age as your brother. So, young man, you are Ade, and your birthday is March the 1st. You had better learn that. Femi looked as if he wanted to worm himself away. He glared at his feet. Even when Uncle Tunde said goodbye and promised that Papa would be with them soon, Femi refused to raise his head.